The morning in Willow Creek began as if the whole world wanted to hide a secret. Fog rolled low over the pine forest, thick enough to blur the trail into a silver haze. The town still slept in its hollow, chimneys cold, streets empty. Only the steady hiss of the creek and the crunch of damp pine needles beneath boots gave proof that anyone moved through that quiet hour. Dr. Emily Carter was among the few awake. At 35, she carried herself with the kind of calm earned only through hardship. Tall and slim, with brown hair twisted into a practical knot, she looked like a woman shaped by both loss and duty. As the town's veterinarian, she had been the one neighbors called in every crisis, horses tangled in barbed wire, sheep struck with fever, or strays left shaking in the rain. Years of mending the broken had given her steady hands and a soft voice that could quiet panic. But it was grief that had given her strength. The sudden accident that had taken her parents had left a wound that never fully healed. And she had poured herself into caring for those who could not care for themselves. Beside her padded Atlas, her German shepherd, a dog who drew glances wherever he went. His coat was a dark charcoal streaked with bronze, a white blaze across his chest like an untaken shield. But it was his eyes that held people. One was a deep, thoughtful brown, the other a piercing amber, bright as flame. They made him seem as though he looked at the world from two angles at once. He was more than a pet. He had once trained as a fire rescue dog. The habits remained, the stillness before movement, the way he tested the air as though smoke might linger unseen, the sudden readiness to dig, to pull, to lead when instinct told him it mattered. Emily had been considering turning back when Atlas suddenly stopped. His body stiffened, fur bristling along his spine. A low growl rolled up from his chest, deep and warning. His amber eye fixed on a shadow in the trees. "What is it, boy?" Emily whispered, her pulse quickening. Atlas pulled hard on the lead, dragging her toward the thicket with a strength that allowed no hesitation. Her boots slid on moss slick with mist as he guided her down the slope toward the creek. That was when she smelled it. The metallic sting of blood cutting sharply through, the clean morning air. Her heart lurched. She pushed aside dripping brush, her breath caught in her throat. A man lay crumpled against a fallen cedar, half hidden by pine needles and fog. His navy patrol shirt was torn and soaked with dirt. A police badge clung weakly to the fabric, dulled by grime. Across his chest spread an ugly dark bloom of blood. Emily dropped to her knees. His face was pale, lips edged blue, though his chest still lifted with shallow breaths. He was in his late 30s, compactly built, short brown hair streaked with gray, jaw shadowed with stubble. His whole body spoke of a man hardened by years of duty, but betrayed now by his own failing strength. "Stay with me," Emily murmured, pressing her fingers to his neck. A faint pulse fluttered beneath her touch. Relief flooded her, sharp and thin. The man's eyes cracked open, storm gray, clouded with pain, yet searching. A groan slipped from him as he tried to move. Emily worked quickly, tugging free her scarf and folding it tight against the bleeding wound. "You need a hospital," she said firmly, fighting panic. But his hand shot up, weak but determined, closing around her wrist. His grip trembled but carried a weight that made her freeze. "No hospital," he rasped, his voice raw and desperate. "Don't take me there." Emily leaned closer, her pulse hammering. "If you've been shot, you won't last without help." His fingers dug tighter into her wrist. His voice cracked, but urgency gave it strength. "Inside. Police. Traitor. Not safe." The words hit her harder than the sight of blood. In Willow Creek, where everyone knew everyone, the idea of corruption wasn't new, but it had always been whispered. Permits passed too easily, cases dropped without reason. But now, here lay the proof, bleeding in front of her, wearing a badge. Atlas shifted suddenly, his body tensing, ears pricked sharp. He moved between Emily and the trail, his stance protective. Through the fog came another sound, the faint drag of footsteps. Emily froze, breath caught in her chest. A figure emerged from the mist. A man in an orange hunting cap, camouflage jacket half zipped, binoculars dangling from his neck. His steps slowed when he saw her kneeling over the officer. His eyes narrowed. Atlas rose to his full height, chest blazing white in the gray morning, a low growl rolling from deep in his throat. The man hesitated, opened his mouth as if to speak, then thought better of it. With a muttered word lost to the fog, he turned and vanished back into the trees. His footsteps dissolved into silence. Emily exhaled hard, her pulse racing. She looked back down at the officer. "What's your name?" she asked quickly. "Daniel Hayes," he whispered, voice breaking. "Officer?" A weak shadow of a smile flickered. "Patrol." "All right, Officer Hayes. I'm Dr. Emily Carter. I won't take you to a hospital, but I promise you this. You won't be left here." She tightened the scarf at his chest, her voice steady even as her thoughts reeled. "You'll come with me. My house is close. You'll be safe there." Atlas barked once, sharp and commanding, as if sealing the vow. Emily slid her arm beneath Daniel's shoulders, lifting him. His weight sagged heavily against her, but he managed to rise, legs trembling yet moving. Atlas took the lead again, no longer pulling, but scanning every path ahead, his mismatched eyes alive with watchfulness. Together they began the slow climb from the creek, the fog curling behind them like a curtain closing on a stage. The town of Willow Creek had not yet woken to its secret, but Emily, Atlas, and Daniel now carried it with each unsteady step. By the time they reached the narrow service road, the fog was thinning. Emily's cabin stood at the forest's edge, cedar shingles dark with rain, the porch sagging but steadfast. It was a place she had built for quiet, a home for someone who gave herself to others, yet guarded her own solitude. Atlas padded ahead, his nose working the air, his body coiled like a spring ready to snap. Emily guided Daniel to the porch, then inside. The cabin smelled faintly of pine resin and antiseptic, part home, part clinic. She lowered Daniel gently onto the leather couch by the hearth. The fire had gone out overnight, so she struck a match, coaxing flames to life until golden light painted his pale face. "Stay with me," she said, pulling open a drawer beneath the table where she kept her medical kit. It was meant for animals, but antiseptic and bandages made no distinction. Daniel's shirt was stiff with blood. His skin, bronzed from sun, looked dull with exhaustion. Close up, she could see more. The scar at his jawline, gray threaded through his cropped hair. His eyes followed her carefully, sharp even through the haze of pain. "You shouldn't risk this," he muttered. Emily ignored the warning. With quick, steady hands, she cut away the fabric, cleaned the wound, and began stitching with quiet precision. "You wouldn't have made it out there," she replied, her tone calm but edged with steel. "So tell me, Officer Hayes, what have you gotten yourself into?" Daniel's breath caught. His voice was low, bitter, as though each word dragged weight heavier than blood. "Victor Grayson," he said at last. The name filled the cabin. "Like smoke." "Our mayor," Daniel added, grimacing. "He's tied to a network, contracts, dirty money, drugs moving through this town. And he's not alone. Some of the department, they're in it too. Cash in their pockets. They look the other way." Emily's chest tightened, though her hands kept working. She had seen Victor Grayson at parades and city hall barbecues, shaking hands, promising growth and progress. To most, he was charming, but Emily had always seen something too smooth in his smile, too polished in his gestures. Daniel's eyes darkened. "I followed a lead. A warehouse outside town. I was supposed to watch, gather intel. They knew I was coming. Ambush. I barely made it out." He winced as she tightened the bandage, but his gaze locked with hers, burning with urgency. If I'd gone to the hospital, I wouldn't have lasted an hour. They'd have finished the job. Emily tied the bandage firmly, meeting his eyes. The weight of truth settled between them, heavy and undeniable. "Then you'll stay here," she said quietly, but with iron in her tone. "Until you can move. Atlas and I will see to it." At the sound of his name, Atlas lifted his head from the rug, his mismatched eyes glowing in the firelight. He gave a low rumble, not at Daniel, but at the window. Emily followed his gaze. The curtains shifted slightly, though the room held no draft. Outside, the forest looked still. But Atlas did not mistake silence for safety. He growled again, deeper this time. Emily rose, crossed the room, and pulled the curtain aside just enough to glance. The mist was nearly gone, replaced by a dull, afternoon gray. Nothing stirred beyond the yard. Yet the unease in Atlas's posture warned her that someone had lingered too close. She returned to the couch, jaw tight. "You weren't followed, were you?" she asked. Daniel shook his head, but did not look certain. Before Emily could press further, a knock sounded on the door. 3 sharp raps that cut through the cabin like nails on glass. Atlas was on his feet instantly, hackles bristling, a low snarl vibrating through the room. Emily's heart leapt, but the voice that followed was familiar. "Emily, it's Mara. You home?" Emily closed her eyes briefly. Of all the times, Mara Jenkins was her nearest neighbor, living a quarter-mile up the road in a yellow clapboard house with peeling paint and a yard always in need of taming. At 60, she was lean and wiry, with silver hair pulled back in a loose bun and eyes that missed little. Widowhood had left her with more time than she wanted, and she filled it with opinions and endless cups of coffee at other people's tables. Though nosy, her meddling was rarely malicious. Beneath the chatter lived a heart quick to offer casseroles and rides into town. Emily cracked the door open a few inches. Mara stood on the porch, wrapped in a heavy-knit shawl, a basket of apples in her arms. Her eyes narrowed at Emily's flushed face. "Everything all right?" "Thought I heard voices." "Fine," Emily said too quickly. "Just busy." Mara tilted her head, suspicion sharpening. She shifted the basket higher. "Well, I brought these, and I swear I saw you dragging someone along the road earlier. Looked hurt. You're not hiding some poor bee. Soul in there, are you?" Atlas pushed his head between Emily and the doorframe, his mismatched gaze fixed on Mara. He didn't growl, but his stance was protective, pressing close to Emily. Emily forced a smile. "It was nothing, Mara. Just a delivery from town." "Heavy boxes?" Mara pursed her lips, unconvinced but unwilling to press outright. Well, you know me, I worry, especially with all that talk in town about strangers skulking around the woods." She handed the basket over, her fingers cold and calloused. "If you need anything, you just shout. I hear more than people think." Emily thanked her, closed the door, and exhaled. When she turned, Daniel was watching from the couch, his expression tight with understanding. "If she suspects, others will too," he said quietly. "Let me worry about Mara," Emily replied, setting the apples aside. "She talks, but she also protects. Forno, you need rest." Atlas settled back near Daniel, though his eyes stayed fixed on the window, every muscle taut. He was not fooled by apples or neighborly concern. The world outside had shifted, and he knew it. The cabin grew quiet again, broken only by the crackle of fire and Daniel's uneven breathing. Emily sat across from him, folding her hands. "If Grayson is as deep as you say, you can't face this alone," she said. "And now neither can I, so you tell me everything, every name, every place." Daniel nodded slowly, resignation carving lines deeper into his face. He began to speak, and the safe house was safe no longer. Not from the truth it now, nor from the As the morning in Willow Creek carried the crisp bite of late autumn, sunlight pressing faintly through gray clouds as though reluctant to fully wake the town, Emily left Daniel resting on her couch, his breathing shallow but steadier than the night before, and she tightened her scarf before stepping outside. Atlas wanted to follow, his mismatched eyes locked on her, as though weighing whether she could be trusted to walk a street without his protection. "Stay," she told him softly, hand brushing his chest blaze. "Guard him." The German shepherd gave a low huff, circled once, and settled by Daniel's side, but his gaze never left the door, even as she closed it behind her. The drive into town was only a few minutes, her old pickup rattling along the narrow road lined with skeletal maples and clapboard houses. Willow Creek on a Sunday morning was usually slow, but Emily felt a tension in the air that made every glance sharper. At the small pharmacy near the diner, she slipped inside to collect antiseptic bandages and antibiotics she could claim were for her patients. Behind the counter was Edna Morris, the pharmacist, a round woman in her late 50s with silver, streaked hair tucked beneath a headscarf and glasses that slid perpetually down her nose. Edna was usually brisk but cheerful, known for slipping children a peppermint with their prescriptions. Today, though, her tone was hushed. "Strange talk going around," she said, sliding Emily's items across the counter. "Sheriff's men say a fugitive was spotted out by the woods. Some drifter. Dangerous." Her eyes narrowed, searching Emily's face for a reaction. Emily forced a neutral smile. Rumors travel faster than facts. At the diner next door, she picked up bread, cheese, and canned soup. The waitress on duty, a wiry young woman named Lydia, leaned across the counter as she bagged the order. "Did you hear? They're hunting someone. Said he attacked an officer and ran off. Whole town's on edge." Emily's stomach nodded. The story was already shifting, designed to paint Daniel as predator, not prey. She paid quickly, murmured thanks, and walked back to her truck under the weight of too many eyes. On the corner, two older men muttered in low tones, one shaking his head. "Saw blood on the trail," he said. "Whoever it was, they won't last long." By the time she returned to her cabin, her chest was tight. She set the groceries down, her hands trembling slightly, and found Daniel propped awkwardly against the arm of the couch. His face was pale, lips pressed thin with effort. Atlas lay curled at his feet, but at the sound of Emily's boots, he rose and padded toward her, tail low, but wagging once in relief. "You shouldn't be up," she scolded, kneeling too. "Check the dressing." Daniel gave a strange smile. "I've been through worse." His voice faltered, then steadied. "But I heard enough outside people know someone's out there. It won't take long before they connected to me." Emily was about to reply when Atlas moved abruptly, nose pressing insistently against Daniel's side. The officer frowned, shifting uncomfortably. Atlas pawed once, then leaned his teeth gently into the hem of Daniel's undershirt and tugged. Emily blinked. "What are you doing, boy?" Daniel winced, reached down and pulled at the fabric where Atlas had worried. From a hidden pocket sewn into the lining, a small black USB drive tumbled into his palm. He stared at it as though surprised to see it again. "I almost forgot," he muttered, voice thick. Emily's eyes widened. "What is it?" "Evidence," he said simply. "Insurance. I hid it when I realized someone was watching me. I must have tucked it away that night." They carried her old laptop to the table, the fire crackling in the background. Emily inserted the drive, heart hammering. The screen lit with folders labeled in neat code. Inside were images, grainy but clear enough. Men in uniform exchanging envelopes, stacks of cash on a desk, signatures scrolled on contracts. One video file opened to reveal a dim office. A man in a suit sat with his back to the camera. When he turned, Emily's breath caught. Mayor Victor Grayson, the familiar face from campaign posters and town parades, shaking hands with two officers Emily recognized by sight. Daniel leaned closer, his jaw clenched. There it is, proof he's not just looking the other way, he's orchestrating it. Emily pressed a hand to her lips. If this gets out, they'll destroy it if they find me first, Daniel interrupted. His eyes were, still, I couldn't go to the hospital. They'd make sure this drive vanished. Atlas saved it, before I even remembered. He just might have saved us all. Atlas sat between them, ears pricked, gaze flicking between their faces as though aware of the gravity of his discovery. Emily scratched his neck, whispering, "Good boy. You keep us one step ahead." The cabin felt smaller now, walls closing in with the weight of secrets. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, and somewhere down the road, a car engine passed too slowly, lingering. Emily and Daniel exchanged a look. Time was running thinner than either wanted to admit. The next day broke under a washed-out sky, clouds dragging low as though weighed with secrets. Emily sat at the kitchen table, the laptop still open with the damning images from the night before. Daniel rested on the couch, pale but a little stronger, his eyes tracing every shadow that passed across the window. Atlas lay near the door, body coiled, mismatched eyes watchful. The evidence they had unearthed sat like a living thing between them, buzzing with danger. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low but certain. "We need someone else, someone who hasn't been bought. I can't do this alone, and I won't risk you carrying this weight by yourself." Emily studied him. "Who can you trust?" He hesitated, then answered. "Deputy Sarah Monroe. She's young, but she doesn't bend. Blonde hair, sharp tongue, tougher than most men in that department. I've seen her call out her own superiors when they tried to bury charges. She doesn't care whose name she bruises. If anyone can help us, it's her." Emily knew the name. Sarah Monroe had a reputation in Willow Creek 32. Athletic build, tall for a woman with straight shoulders, and a presence that didn't shrink under stares. Some thought her too bold. Others respected her unflinching honesty. She had grown up in town, the daughter of a steel worker killed in a factory collapse, and that loss had carved her into someone who refused to let negligence or corruption stand. They couldn't meet at Emily's cabin, not with eyes already prowling. The veterinary clinic seemed safer, a place Sarah had visited before with stray cats and injured dogs. Emily made the call from a payphone in town, her voice low, requesting Sarah come after hours. No tales, just urgency. Sarah agreed. That evening, as twilight draped itself across Willow Creek, Emily left Daniel hidden at the cabin and drove into town with Atlas beside her. The clinic stood at the edge of Main Street, a squat brick building with peeling paint, but a reputation for miracles. Inside, the scent of hay and antiseptic mingled, cages lined with blankets waiting for animals in recovery. Emily dimmed the lights and waited. Sarah arrived minutes later, stepping in with a sharp knock and her usual stride. She wore her uniform, khaki shirt tucked into dark trousers, badge gleaming at her belt. Her blonde hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, green eyes cutting through. Dimness. "You said it was urgent," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. She scanned the room, then fixed her gaze on Emily. "What's going on?" Emily drew a breath, ready to speak. But before she could, the bell above the door jingled. A man stepped inside. He was tall, lean, wearing a mechanic's jacket streaked with oil, baseball cap pulled low. He carried himself with the ease of someone pretending not to notice. "Evening," he said casually. "Got a dog outside. Thought maybe he needed a look." Emily's pulse quickened. There had been no vehicle outside, no animal waiting. Something in his presence was off. The way his eyes flicked not at her, but at Sarah's badge, the way his hands hovered near his pockets. Atlas was already moving. He rose from where he had been lying, ears back, ridge of fur standing. His nose twitched, and a low rumble rolled from his chest. Emily knew that look. Atlas had caught a scent. Something sharp, metallic, powder, gun oil. The man's mask slipped, his eyes narrowed, hand twitching toward his jacket. But Atlas lunged before the gesture could complete, teeth flashing as he drove the intruder back. The man cursed, stumbling, arm raised to shield himself. He shoved the door open and bolted into the night, disappearing into the alley with Atlas's growls, chasing him out. Sarah had already drawn her weapon, her reflexes crisp. She ran to the doorway, peered outside, but the street was empty. She holstered the pistol slowly, her face set. "That was no customer," she said. Emily's hands trembled as she stroked Atlas's fur, calming him. "He knew you'd be here," she whispered. "He was watching." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Then you'd better start. Explaining why someone with gun oil on his jacket just came sniffing around your clinic while I'm standing here." Emily led her deeper inside, away from the front windows. She looked at Sarah directly because this town isn't what you think. There are officers on Grayson's payroll, and Daniel Hayes nearly died proving it. He's at my cabin now. He's wounded, and I have evidence. Sarah blinked, the blunt honesty momentarily disarming her. Then her jaw tightened. "Show me." Emily opened the laptop and pulled up the files from the USB. Sarah's face hardened as she scrolled through images. Cash changing hands. Signatures scrolled. Grayson's smug expression as he leaned across his desk. The deputy's lips pressed into a lean. "A son of a," she muttered. I knew the numbers didn't add up. Building permits pushed through too fast. Patrols. Rerouted without reason. But this she exhaled sharply. "This is a rot from the root." Emily nodded. "That's why Daniel couldn't go to the hospital. He said someone inside the department would have finished him. We can't go to just anyone. We came to you because we need someone who won't fold." Sarah closed the laptop with deliberate calm. "You were right to call me, but after tonight they'll know you're not alone. That man wasn't here to make small talk. He was here to test the ground, and Atlas showed him exactly where the line is." Atlas, still bristling, lay at Emily's feet again, one amber eye fixed on the door, the other sweeping the shadows of the clinic. He had not forgotten the scent of gun oil, and he would not forgive it. The air inside the clinic felt heavier after the intruder's visit. Shadows stretched long across the floor as the last of the daylight drained from Willow Creek, leaving only the glow of the desk lamp and the restless crackle of Atlas's claws against the tile. Emily, Daniel, and Sarah sat close together, the laptop shut, but its secrets pressing down on them all the same. It was Sarah who broke the silence, her voice steady yet edged with frustration. "What you showed me only confirms what I've suspected. For months," she said, her green eyes narrowing. "But it's worse than I thought. Cases disappearing from the system. Witnesses vanishing without a trace. It's all tied back to one name. Grayson." She leaned back, folding her arms, her posture both defensive and unyielding. "A construction company, Grayson Development, has its hands on every suspicious deal in town. They win bids nobody else can touch, and when safety violations pile up, the reports vanish. I filed 3 complaints myself. Each one disappeared like smoke. A week later, the foreman who gave me the documents was gone too. Officially, he moved out of state. Unofficially." Her lips pressed into a grim line. "He never made it past the county line." Daniel shifted uncomfortably on the chair Emily had pushed closer to the table. His face was pale, but his gray eyes carried the stubborn fire of a man unwilling to bow. "That warehouse I was watching before they jumped me, it's under Grayson's control. I saw trucks go in and out, unmarked, night after night. Whatever's inside those shipments isn't drywall and cement." Emily's mind churned, flashes of memory rising unbidden. "Wait," she said softly. "A few months ago, the clinic received a call about abandoned dogs, German shepherds, mixed breeds, all young but already showing signs of training. Their paws were scarred from concrete floors, their teeth filed oddly. I thought it was cruel backyard breeding. She looked between them, her voice tightening. But what if it wasn't? What if they were trained for something else like smuggling? Dogs can carry, transport, even mask scents. If the wrong people were using them, it would explain why they were dumped when no longer useful. Sarah's eyes sharpened. Drug runners have done worse. Using animals as cover is barbaric but effective. If Grayson's people are tied to that, it makes this even bigger than graft and payoffs. It's trafficking Atlas lying nearby. Lifted his head at the word, his ears pry-cricked, nose twitching as if the conversation itself had conjured sense. Emily reached to stroke his neck, but Atlas stood abruptly, padding toward the corner where Daniel's jacket hung. Hess sniffed it once, then turned to the door, his body stiff with certainty. "What is it, boy?" Emily asked. Atlas barked once, sharp and decisive, then pawed at the door. Daniel leaned forward, wincing but focused. He's on to something. In the video on that USB, I noticed a logo stenkled on one of the containers, a faded green arrow. If Atlas caught the scent from my jacket, it means I brushed against one of those containers the night of the ambush. Emily opened the laptop again, replaying the footage. There it was, plain. If you knew to look, a shipping container in the background, the same arrow half peeled. Sarah's jaw tightened. There's an old yard on the outskirts of town near the rail spur. Grayson's development company lists it as Asterage Depot. I've driven past it at night and seen guards posted like it's Fort Knox. That must be it. Atlas gave another short bark, pacing in front of them, amber eye gleaming in the low light. He stopped at the door, waiting as if to say, "Follow me." Sarah rose to her feet, adjusting her uniform belt. If the dogs picked up the trail, we'd be foolish not to trust him. He's already pulled more weight in this than half the department combined. Daniel struggled up as well, though Emily rushed to steady him. "You're not fit to move," she said firmly. "I don't need to fight," Daniel countered. "I just need to see. This case is mine, Emily. If Grayson falls, it has to be by the book. Otherwise, they'll bury it as fast as the others." His voice cracked with both pain and determination, and she relented, though worry creased her brow. They moved cautiously into the night, Atlas leading. The German shepherd's stride was purposeful, his nose close to the ground until he caught the scent again. He with them through back alleys and narrow roads, avoiding the main drag where patrol cars prowled like hunting dogs. Emily glanced up at the rooftops, half expecting shadows to peel away, but none came. The farther they walked, the quieter Willow Creek became. Streetlights thinned, replaced by the dim glow of a distant rail yard. Rusted fences loomed, dotted with signs that read, "No trespassing." Behind them, stacked containers stood like silent sentinels, their paint flaking, their doors chained. And there it was, the green arrow, half-peeled but unmistakable. Atlas stopped before it, planted his paws, and let out a low growl that echoed in the cold night air. Sarah exhaled slowly, hand resting on the grip of her sidearm. "This is it," she whispered. "The warehouse is here." Emily wrapped her arms tighter around herself, the chill not only from the wind. The pieces were aligning. Missing witnesses, abandoned dogs, the mayor's smiling face, and Atlas loyal, sharp-eyed Atlas had led them directly to the heart of it. The rail yard stretched ahead like a fortress of shadows and steel. Rows of shipping containers stacked 3 high created narrow canyons where sound echoed and died. Atlas led them to Thione, marked with the peeling green arrow, but a chain-link fence topped with coils of rusted razor wire blocked their path. Emily's breath clouded in the cool air as she scanned the perimeter. "We can't just walk in," she whispered. Sarah Monroe crouched near the fence, her uniform blending into the dark. Her blonde ponytail caught a faint glint of the street lamp as she studied the padlock. "Perimeter's solid, but there's a maintenance gate around the east side." I've seen trucks use it. If we circle, we might find it unsecured. Daniel Hayes leaned heavily against the fence post, pain etched into the lines of his face. His gray eyes still burned with purpose, though his wound slowed him. If Grayson's using this place, he'll have guards. We have to assume they know we're close. Atlas sniffed the air, his blaze-white chest catching the dim light. Mismatched eyes focused and unyielding. He gave a low growl, then padded east as though confirming Sarah's thought. The group followed quietly, footsteps muffled against the gravel. Around the corner, they found the service gate, its lock old and crusted. Sarah tugged at it, frowning. Not reinforced. I can cut it if we... She stopped, her head snapping up. Atlas stiffened, ears prick-cricked, a rumble vibrating through his chest. Emily froze. From the darkness beyond the containers came the crunch of boots. Two figures emerged, their uniforms confirming what their sneers already betrayed. Officer Randall Pierce stepped forward first, bulky frame filling the narrow path. His scarred cheek caught the glow of the security lamp, and his eyes were flat. Cold. At his side was Officer Cole Briggs. Leaner, slick, dark hair combed back, restless, hands twitching near his holster. "Well, isn't this something?" Randall rasped, voice like gravel. "Thought you'd be smart enough to stay down, Hayes. Guess you like pain." Cole smirked, gaze flicking to Sarah. "And you, deputy?" "Pretty face, bad choices. You should have kept your head down." Sarah's jaw tightened, but her voice was steady. "I'm not the one selling out my badge." Randall chuckled darkly. "You think anyone cares about honor when there's real money on the table?" The tension snapped like dry twigs. Cole's hand flashed for his pistol, but Atlas was faster. With a snarl, the shepherd lunged, slamming into him before the gun cleared leather. Teeth clamped down on Cole's arm, dragging him hard against the gravel. The weapon clattered away, sliding under a container. Randall cursed, raising his gun toward Daniel, who stumbled back against the fence. Emily's scream cut through the night. Sarah fired, her bullet sparking against the dirt inches from Randall's boots. "Drop it!" she barked, eyes blazing, stance solid. Randall sneered and fired anyway, the shot ricocheting off metal with a screech. Emily shoved Daniel down behind a pallet, her body shielding his as shards of rust rained. At last tightened his grip, forcing Cole to howl and writhe, his arm bleeding as he struggled. And then, from the road, a startled voice rang out. "Emily, what in God's name?" It was Mara Jenkins, her wiry frame illuminated by the street lamp at the yard's edge. Shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders, basket of groceries clutched in one hand. She had been walking home when she stumbled upon the scene. Her sharp eyes widened as she took in the sight. Uniforms, weapons, Atlas pinning a man to the ground. "Mara." "Go!" Emily shouted, panic raw in her voice. "Run home now!" Mara hesitated only a moment before obeying, her shawl whipping in the wind as she fled back toward the road. But the look on her face lingered fear. Yes, but also something else. Suspicion. Realization. Randall spat a curse, backing into the shadows. "This isn't over," he snarled. With a sudden shove, he broke for the gap between containers. Cole scrambled after him, clutching his mauled arm, blood streaking the gravel. They vanished into the dark maze of steel. Atlas stood trembling, chest heaving, his amber eye burning bright. He released a low growl, then returned to Daniel's side. Posture protective, gaze scanning the shadows for any sign of return. Sarah lowered her weapon slowly, her breath heavy but controlled. "Two corrupt cops caught red-handed," she said, her voice tight. "If they're desperate enough to ambush us here, it means Grayson's grip is slipping." Daniel straightened with Emily's. "Help!" Pain etched across his features, but determination unwavering. "Then we press harder. We don't back down now." Emily rested a hand on Atlas's thick fur, her heart still pounding. The shepherd leaned into her, steady and unshaken, as though reminding them all. They had survived tonight because he had chosen the right moment to strike. The yard was silent again, but it was the silence after thunder, the kind that promised another storm was already on its way. The night after the ambush at the warehouse stretched on with a tension that refused to fade. Emily could still hear the echo of gunshots ricocheting against steel, still feel Atlas pressed against her side, his body rigid as stone. In the quiet of her cabin, Daniel rested in a chair near the fire, his face drawn with pain, but his mind sharper than ever. Sarah stood near the window, her green eyes narrowed, scanning every movement outside as though expecting Randall or Cole to materialize again from the shadows. The USB files lay spread across Emily's desk, evidence enough to ruin careers if handled properly. But Daniel knew better. "If we hand this to the department," he said hoarsely, "it'll vanish before it reaches a courtroom. Grayson has men everywhere. They'll bury it and us with it." Emily's hands trembled as she sat down a cup of tea beside him. "So, what do we do? Hold it forever? Pretend we don't know?" Sarah turned from the window, her posture tall, her blonde ponytail loose from the long night. "No," she said firmly. "We go higher. Above Grayson, above the sheriff. There's one man I trust, Robert Lane. He's FBI, Midwest Division. Used to advise our state police before he transferred. He knows what corruption smells like. If anyone can get this into the right hands, it's him." Daniel's gaze softened, though doubt lingered. "Lane. I've heard of him. Calm as stone. The type who doesn't raise his voice but still fills a room. You're sure he's clean?" Sarah nodded. "I'd stake my badge on it." The room settled into a fragile silence, broken only by the crackle of firewood. Atlas, lying stretched across the rug, lifted his mismatched eyes toward the door, ears twitching. Emily knew that look, had sensed something, though not danger yet, almost as if he was waiting. That waiting ended the next afternoon. Finn Jenkins, Mara's son, wandered the outskirts of Willow Creek with his camera slung around his neck. At 15, he was lanky, with a mop of chestnut hair that never stayed combed, freckles scattered across his nose, and eyes that burned with restless curiosity. His mother often scolded him for sneaking out after dark, but Finn had a knack for capturing what others missed: old barns half hidden by fog, stray cats slinking along rooftops, or the quiet sadness of empty streets. That evening, while Mara prepared supper, Finn slipped away again, wandering near City Hall. Through the lens of his camera, he saw movement in the shadows, men in uniform entering through the back door. He crouched low, adjusted the focus, and froze. Mayor Victor Grayson stood beneath the weak glow of a lamp, his polished suit unmistakable. He shook hands with Randall Pierce and Cole Briggs, the same officers who had ambushed Daniel. Finn's shutter clicked 3 times before fear snapped him back into motion. He tucked the camera to his chest and hurried away, footsteps quick on the cracked pavement. But he wasn't alone. A dark sedan rolled slowly from the alley, headlights dim, engine purring like a predator. Finn's pulse spiked. He ducked into a side street, clutching the camera. The car followed, tires crunching gravel. Back at the cabin, Atlas suddenly rose from the rug, muscles rigid, head snapping toward the door. He growled low, a sound that pulled Emily and Sarah to their feet instantly. Seconds later, frantic knocking rattled the wood. "It's Finn!" came a breathless voice. "Please!" Emily threw the door open. Finn stumbled inside, his chest heaving, eyes wide with panic. "They saw me. No." He clutched his camera like a lifeline. Atlas bolted past him, snarling into the night. From the road came the faint roll of tires, then the quick screech of brakes before the car sped away, unwilling to face what guarded Emily's door. The shepherd returned moments later, his mismatched eyes burning with the satisfaction of a job. Done, he had chased off the hunter, protected the boy. Emily guided Finn to a chair, her voice gentle. "You're safe now. Tell me what happened." Finn gulped air, then held out the camera. His hands trembled, but his voice steadied. I took pictures. The mayor with those cops. They saw me. They tried to follow. Sarah took the camera, scrolling through the images, her jaw clenched. This is it. This ties Grayson to his dirty officers. Not whispers, not suspicion, visual proof. She looked at Finn, her eyes softening. You did something brave. Reckless, but brave. Daniel leaned forward, pain flickering in his eyes, but his voice strong. It's another piece of the puzzle. Between the USB and these photos, Grayson's armor is cracking. Mara burst into the cabin minutes later, Shaw flying as she stormed. In, her eyes blazing with worry. Finn Jenkins? What on earth? She stopped short, taking in the sight of Daniel slumped in a chair, Sarah in uniform, Emily by the fire, and her son holding evidence that could bring the town to its knees. Her breath caught, but beneath the fear, there was steel. She set a hand on Finn's shoulder. If this is what you've gotten into, then God help us all, but I won't see you stand alone. Atlas nudged Finn's knee with his nose, as if acknowledging the boy had joined their fragile alliance. The shepherd's presence steadied him, the boy's trembling easing as he reached down to stroke the thick fur. For the first time, Finn felt the weight of his curiosity transform into something else. Responsibility. Sarah closed the camera, her decision clear. Tomorrow, I call Lane. We can't hold this any longer. If we stay silent, Grayson wins. It's time to break the silence. Emily looked around the room. The wounded officer, the unyielding deputy, the frightened but determined teenager, the loyal neighbor, and the dog who had saved them all. Her heart tightened with both fear and hope. Then we do it together, she said softly. Atlas gave a single bark, sharp and resolute, as though sealing their vow. The town hall of Willow Creek had not seen such a gathering in years. The wooden benches filled quickly, creaking under the weight of anxious bodies. Farmers with dirt still on their boots, shopkeepers in worn coats, mothers clutching children, all drawn by the promise of answers. The air smelled faintly of dust and varnish, sunlight streaming through tall windows to paint pale stripes across the crowd. At the front, a long oak table was cleared, microphones set, flanked by the town seal. Daniel Hayes stood at one side, his uniform jacket buttoned despite the stiffness of his healing wounds. He looked tired, but his storm-gray eyes carried a determination no injury could dim. Emily Carter stood near him, hands folded against her coat, her tall, lean figure steady, though her pulse raced. Beside her, Atlas sat like a statue of flesh and fur, his mismatched eyes unblinking, chest blaze shining under the lamps. Sarah Monroe entered next, her khaki uniform crisp, green eyes hard as glass. She had spent the last 24 hours in constant contact with FBI agent Robert Lane, preparing for this moment. Now she strode to the table with Lane at her side. Lane, 50 years old, had the presence of a man who needed no raised voice to command attention. His skin was dark, his features carved with patience, salt and pepper hair cropped close. He wore a plain navy suit and carried himself with quiet authority. The room hushed as he took his place. Mayor Victor Grayson arrived late, flanked by his loyal officers Randall Pierce and Cole Briggs, both of whom looked uneasy under the collective stare of the town's folk. Grayson, however, wore his usual polished confidence, tall, broad-shouldered, his suit flawless, his smile a politician's shield. He raised a hand in the practiced greeting, though the murmurs from the benches carried no warmth. Lane spoke first, his calm voice cutting through the air. Ladies and gentlemen of Willow Creek, we are here to address matters that strike at the very heart of this community. Tonight, evidence will be presented. You may find it difficult to hear, but truth seldom arrives without weight. Daniel stepped forward, setting the USB drive and Finn's photographs on the table. The projector flickered to life, casting images onto the wall, stacks of cash, envelopes exchanged, handshakes in shadowed rooms. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Grayson's face filled the screen, captured shaking hands with Randall and Cole. Then Finn's photographs appeared, grainy but clear, the mayor beneath a street lamp. Corruption caught in still frames. Finn sat in the front row beside Mara, clutching his camera. His freckled face flushed with nervous pride as people turned to murmur, "That boy took those." Sarah nodded toward him. A brave young man helped make sure this truth could not be buried. The crowd erupted into soft applause, and Finn's chest swelled. Mara dabbed her eyes with her shawl, shoulders trembling. She leaned toward Emily, her voice breaking. "I doubted you, child. I thought you were hiding something reckless. I'm sorry. You were saving us all." Emily took her hand gently, her smile forgiving. Grayson's composure faltered as the final video played the office footage of him pocketing bribes. Lane stepped closer, his voice now firm steel. "Victor Grayson, by order of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, you are under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, and corruption." Randall and Cole shifted, eyes darting toward the exit. Cole whispered, panic cracking his grin. They moved as if to bolt, but Atlas was already on his feet. The shepherd leapt forward, barking with thunderous force, blocking the aisle. His growl reverberated like judgment itself, freezing the men where they stood. The crowd rose, gasps turning to shouts. Sarah advanced with her pistol drawn, deputies rushing in behind her. "Don't even think about it," she barked. The corrupt officers froze, their defiance bleeding away. Grayson tried one last smile, but it cracked under the weight of silence. The cuffs clicked shut around his wrists, and the mayor of Willow Creek was led away not by applause but by the echoes of betrayal. When the chaos ebbed, Lane addressed the town once more. "Justice belongs to all of you, but justice is also guarded by those who refuse to look away. Tonight, these people, Officer Hayes, Deputy Monroe, Dr. Carter, young Finn Jenkins, and even this loyal shepherd, have shown you what it means to stand when it matters most." The room erupted into applause, louder now, a tide of relief and pride. Sarah stood tall, her green eyes shining as the sheriff's office announced her promotion. She would be taking command, a new start for the force. Daniel, his face softened by a rare smile, leaned toward Emily. "I think I'll stay," he said quietly. "Willow Creek needs rebuilding." "And so do I." Emily's heart tightened, her gaze lifting. To the people around them, their neighbors no longer just frightened but hopeful. "Then we'll do it together," she whispered. Atlas stood at the front of the hall, chest out, tail steady, his mismatched eyes locked on the fading sun through the tall windows. When the last of the corrupt tried to shrink away, his bark had been the signal that justice would not be denied. Now, as the evening light poured gold across the hall, he stood beside Daniel and Emily, not just a dog, but a sentinel of loyalty and truth. In that moment, Atlas was no longer only their guardian. He was the symbol of Willow Creek's rebirth. In the end, the story of Willow Creek is not just about exposing corruption, or even about one brave German shepherd standing firm in the face of danger. It is about how light will always break through the darkness when ordinary people choose courage over fear. Some call it fate, but I believe it is something greater. It is God's hand moving quietly, sending us guardians in unexpected forms. Sometimes through neighbors who find their voice, sometimes through children with cameras, and yes, sometimes even through the loyalty of a dog. We may not face mayors and corrupt officers in our daily lives, but all of us carry silent battles. And when we think we cannot goon, God reminds us that He never leaves us. He gives us strength, allies, and moments of grace that feel like miracles. So, if this story touched you, share it with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment below and write Amen. If you believe that God's timing is always perfect, subscribe to this channel for more stories that show how faith, courage, and loyalty can change the world. May the Lord bless you and your loved ones with peace, protection, and the certainty that no one is ever truly alone.